We gotta stop streaming. We gotta go to Smaulgld. Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is February the 18th, Monday evening, 2019. Tonight's topic is the crypto winter over. Big day in the crypto markets today. One day does not a market make, but we are going to discuss some of the developments in the cryptocurrency space today. We're also going to do a bit of a review of the news. Of course, we'll have Moranica. But first, let's take a look at the prices in the markets. Now remember, today was President's Day, so the markets were closed, at least the equity markets were closed. The gold and silver markets were open on an abbreviated basis, and of course the crypto markets never sleep, and they were open and they rose today. Well, let's first take a look at some gold and silver stories and the gold and silver prices today. All right, so gold today went up a little bit. Yes, it did. The gold price went up, not too much, but it did go up $4. It went up $4.07 and closed at $13.25. It is currently trading right now, again, at $13.26, so it's pretty much where it closed. And the silver price, well, let's take a look what happened to silver. More like what happened to it rather than what silver did. And silver managed to eke out a 2-cent gain to $15.78. Still looking to get back above that $16 mark. Hasn't been able to do it. Gold and silver both hit their respective $16 and $1,300 marks a couple of weeks ago. Silver lost it. Gold has managed to hold on to it. And what has that done to our unsustainable gold-silver ratio? I can't believe we still cover this every night, but we have to. And there it is, 84-1. There are people out there still, for 10 years, believing these stories that somehow, because the gold-silver ratio once was 16-1 or 15-1, that therefore it's destined to return to that. And every day that it goes higher, it just means more money for them in the future when the gold-silver ratio eventually goes back to its, quote, natural ratio. In fact, they've been convinced that the natural ratio is 9-1. And of course, that's all a bunch of nonsense. It's cherry-picked data. The reason that the gold-silver ratio was ever 16-1 or 15-1, it was set by a bimetallic standard by the United States government. It wasn't a market set. And then the 9-1 is based on the current mining ratio, which again has nothing to do with relative rarity, has nothing to do with, or may have nothing to do with, and generally doesn't, to do with pricing and valuations on two assets or two commodities that are really not the same thing. The only reason that you could ever compare the two is when they were both used as money and both mandated as money and mandated as currencies by the U.S. government or other governments. But since they no longer are, the two metals serve two distinct purposes, with the silver, quote, monetary or investment demand being less than 15% of overall silver demand, while gold still maintains a relatively robust percentage demand for investment between 40 and 45% when you take into account individual investors and central banks, and the remaining gold demand is jewelry, whereas the remaining, or the largest portion of silver's investment demand is for industry. And that doesn't mean that silver can't rise, But when people talk about the ratio, they're living in a day gone by that no longer exists when you're looking at a ratio that's based on the relative monetary values of the two metals. The two metals don't have monetary value today, even though you may insist that they do. Gold is money, period. Silver is money, period. And all that kind of rubbish that you hear. Now, gold has a greater claim on being a monetary asset because it's held by central banks. Silver has no claim on that other than an historic claim. However, that doesn't mean that silver can't rise. Look at palladium. Palladium has no monetary value and it skyrocketed. So insisting it's very narrow focused. It's actually, in some respects, it is moronic to keep insisting that silver is money and that's why it's going to go higher when there are things that are commodities like silver that go higher that aren't money. Has nothing to do with them being money or their history. Palladium, rhodium, all have skyrocketed on the basis of them being commodities in demand, not because they are money. And in fact, we talked last night that perhaps silver might get its commodity boost. If not, if we get the Alexander Ocasio-Cortez Green New Deal, that's a long shot, but you may get some modified version of the Green Deal where there is more government money put into things like solar energy that may boost silver demand and may create some type of supply crunch and drive the silver price higher. Similarly, all those people worrying that the dollar is going to be crushed by, not worrying, they're hoping China is going to crush the dollar. The BRICS have had a de-dollarization and all that other nonsense. And the idea there is when the dollar collapses, gold is going to go higher. More likely, there may be a rush into safety for gold as a monetary asset, not because the dollar collapses, but because many other currencies collapse, including the Chinese economy, the Chinese yuan. Anyway, think differently instead of just listening to, because what most of the alternative financial media does is they repeat these: China to crush the dollar, game over, game changer, gold back yuan, China is smart, they read Sun Tzu, they like gold, Americans are stupid, there's no gold at Fort Knox, JP Morgan is buying silver. You hear all these stories, and really they're not the reasons to buy gold. In fact, most of them are just made up nonsense. Gold-silver ratio, unsustainable. And people believe this, and they somewhat, I get people, they get annoyed when I point this out to them, and they say, you don't like precious metals, you don't like gold and silver. No, it's not nothing to do with that. It means I don't believe these stories. I don't think these stories are reasonable. I don't think these stories are the reason you should buy gold and silver. COMEX default. Okay. Enough of that. We have to cover it every night because we do look at the gold and silver prices and we do look at the gold-silver ratio. And really, you do have to be somewhat moronic to look at the gold-silver ratio over the last 50 to 100 years and insist somehow the markets are just screwed up and it really should be 16 to 1 and never, ever, ever think, wow, maybe why isn't it 15 to 1 or 16 to 1? Do you really think that when you listen to someone on YouTube telling you it should be 16 to 1 or 15 to 1, that's the only place, it's the only person, the only channel you should listen to? Oh, go and listen to other channels. They'll tell you the same thing. Well, then it must be true. I mean, you have to step out of your own comfort zone and maybe do your own research and try to figure out why the gold-silver ratio isn't 16 to 1. And maybe on the assumptions that they're giving you never will be. The only way the gold-silver ratio will ever get down to 16 to 1 on a monetary basis is if somehow the world decided to go back on a precious metal standard and wait for it, not just a precious metal standard or a gold standard, but a bimetallic standard at which they valued gold and silver at 16 to 1. The former is unlikely in the first place that they're ever even going to go back to a gold standard. But second of all, the fact that they would go back to a gold and silver standard, a bimetallic standard, and set the ratio at 16 to 1, you can forget about it. Forget about it. All right, let's move on now. Some other good gold stories today. Silver story. Yeah, some silver stories today. Italy might want to sell its gold. Now, they've established, I think, the people that work in the government, that is their gold. And they may want to sell their gold to avoid next year's tax hike, to avoid an increase in value of the tax. Who knows if they'll do this? Who knows if it'll have any impact? Keep in mind, Italy has 2,450 tons, I believe, is the amount that they have. Fair amount, almost a year's supply, a year's mining production worth of gold, so it's not insignificant. Don't know if they'll sell any, don't know if they'll sell all, who knows, but it's just something to keep in mind, and we indeed will keep you updated. All the Smaulgld mug stackers and game changers will be well served tuning in each and every night, as we do this every night, to find out what's going on in the gold and silver markets and the crypto markets and the economy. Here's another story, again, potentially game changer, not necessarily a game over story, but this has been going on for a while. They're talking about in Russia, the citizens have to pay a 20% VAT, value-added tax. It's more of a European concept. We don't have that here in the United States, but you could view it as a sales tax, I suppose. In Europe, the Western Europe, you pay VAT on silver. That does keep the actual physical demand for silver for investment purposes down in Europe, because you got to pay VAT, not on gold, but in Russia you do pay. Now, some people are estimating this could mean 50 to 100 extra tons of gold a year, possibly. Depends on what the Russians think about gold, whether the Russians have disposable income, they want to spend it on gold. We'll see. But something, again, to keep in mind about potential gold demand. What else do we got? Now, India. We always talk about India because India is a very big player in both the gold and silver physical markets, whereas China is really only big in the gold physical markets. They're not as big of a consumer as silver as India is. Now, India, I get the numbers from Nick Laird, who pulls them directly from the Indian website, but the Indian website is a little behind. It's like behind by a couple of months, and there's usually people at the Indian ministries that leak out semi-official numbers to places like Reuters, which is with this refinitive metal. I don't know why they rebranded themselves this, but this is their refinitive metals. They apparently have the January numbers. My numbers only go through officially through November. Should be getting the December numbers soon. But they're saying that through January, Indians' gold imports are up 38% on a year-over-year basis at 56 tons. They say it's nothing to write home about, and they're pretty much right there, because in 2017, India imported over 900 tons. So, at a 58 run rate of 58, you're looking at a 700 ton a year. It's not bad. They did a little more than that in 2018, even through November, the numbers that I have. But as they're mentioning, they're markedly down from last quarter of 2018 compared to the same of 2017, as I mentioned. However, silver has started the year with a bang in India. January Indian imports surged 158%, and they're expecting another high year of demand. Yes, so Indian silver imports are and have been elevated the past few years. India is primarily interested in silver as an industrial metal. For silverware, they account for 70% of the world's silverware. They still buy middle class, upper middle class, rich Indians will have a silver set. Not just, the knives and the forks, but they'll have the teapot, the plate. They'll have all the accoutrements. So silverware, very, very culturally, I wouldn't say it's important, but it is something that they buy. I'm old enough to remember my parents used to have a silver set. That was something they received when they got married. That was a very common gift to get. It was part of setting up shop, setting up home as a family. You would get a silver set. You young couple couldn't afford a silver set. So usually one of the family members or someone would buy them a silver set. All right, let's see what other stories we have in the gold and silver before we move on. South Africa. The story comes to us from Rory at the Daily Coin. South African gold mining production drops by 31%. You may not recall, but there was a period of time when South Africa was of significant geopolitical importance because they used to produce the free world's gold, and that was very important when the world was on the U.S. dollar standard under Bretton Woods from 1944 to 1971. Remember, Russia was in the Soviet Union essentially during that entire period. They were a large gold producer, but they produced gold for the unfree world. And during that free world period, the CIA used to keep very close track on the mining production of South Africa, because one of the issues with the Bretton Woods standard was there was not enough gold really to go around to maintain the growth in the global financial system since 1944. And the United States was reluctant to raise the price of gold because it would devalue the dollar. So they fought to keep the price at $35 an ounce. And the two ways they fought it was they tried to get South Africa to produce more gold, i.e. to increase the money supply, in a sense, if that's what gold was at the time, and also to try to manipulate the price down and keep it at that mandated price of $35 that they had set in 1934 by the Gold Act of 1934, which set the price of gold at $35. Today, South African mines are essentially depleted, and a lot of the South African mines actually operate at a loss. Some of them have cost per ounce, all in a sustainable cost at $1,700 up to $2,700, $3,000 an ounce, and some of them still produce at that level. But it looks like South Africa no longer has that position of, in a sense, they used to have a dominant position geopolitically, just like Saudi Arabia had, and Saudi Arabia is losing that position, and they realize that. That's why they're trying to move their economy into investing in high tech in the United States and so on, because the United States outproduces Saudi Arabia today. So does Russia, so do a lot of other places, and Saudi Arabia is not going to be the place to get oil. That's why this whole petrodollar is dying. It's really irrelevant now. The petrodollar, if Saudi Arabia decides to sell its oil, which it's not going to do now that the United States has forgiven the Khashoggi murder and has canceled the Iranian deal. Remember, Saudi Arabians are against Iranians. Since that's happened, there's not a chance that they're going to not keep to their petrodollar arrangement, whereby they price their oil only in dollars and accept only dollars for their oil. But in addition to that, they're not even the largest player anymore, and countries still need dollars to buy oil from the United States, which is now a major oil producer and exporter, and major natural gas exporter and coal exporter. So the idea about the petrodollar, I think that's an outdated concept. Even if Saudi Arabia were to decide to sell their oil, which they're not going to do, to other countries and other currencies, it's not game over, dollar collapse, gold to skyrocket. That's nonsense. Countries hold dollars for other reasons other than to buy oil from Saudi Arabia. They have far more in excess in their reserves than they need to buy oil from Saudi Arabia. They still need oil. They still need dollars to buy oil from Saudi Arabia. And of course, they need dollars to buy oil from the United States. So, wouldn't worry about petrodollar, but that's again another gold pumper story. And again, it's not a reason to buy gold. End of the petrodollar. And people hear that, and they hear it on 20 channels, and they go around saying the dollar's going to collapse because the petrodollar, game over, game changer. Then it's going to be gold back yuan. I can't. People believe these stories only because, really, I'm probably the only precious metal analyst that challenges this nonsense. And unfortunately, everyone hears these stories and they come to me and say, you must be a shill. You must be a disinformation agent. No, I just look at things the way they are, not trying to sell anything. By the way, if you are interested in buying gold or silver, you can buy it here too, off the Smaulgld affiliate links. I don't sell it, but I do have links on the site or below this BitChute and YouTube from SD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange, Golden Eagle Coins, and you can buy gold or silver through those links, and many of you do, and I do appreciate that. Smaulgld gets a small commission. I do appreciate that you do purchase gold and silver, not on the basis of hearing some nonsense story set to skyrocket, but you actually did your own research, and you think that it's what you want to do, and if that's what you want to do, not investment advice, please do so through the Smaulgld links. All right, let's see what other gold and silver game changer stories we have. Do we have any other game changers set to skyrocket? No, that does it for gold and silver. Before we move on to cryptos, let's do, should we do China or should we do the 25th Amendment? I picked China. Okay, China. What's going on with China? Now, this is something, again, a lot of the gold pumpers pump China. China's their gold buddy. They read Sun Tzu, the Belt and Road. China's going to crush the dollar. All this stuff. And the only reason they want that, or they think that, is they think they're going to get rich, because if China crushes the dollar, then the gold is going to skyrocket and they're going to be rich. And Chinese are smart and they like gold, and people in the West are dumb because they don't understand gold. A totally perverted view of what China is. It's not like everyone wakes up in China in the morning and goes, where's the gold? Where's the gold? I'm smart. I read Sun Tzu, so I'm going to go buy gold. Most of these people have never been to China, and the little they know about China is basically from gold pumper channels. They don't understand that China is the furthest thing away from a sound money, free market environment. It's a centrally planned government. heavy on this censorship. It's unbelievable that people actually think China is their gold buddy, and then they root for China against the United States because the dollar is going to collapse, not realizing that China is its own debt monster Ponzi scheme. In fact, I saw David Stockman today. Maybe they'll start listening now. He called it the Ponzi scheme red style, and he was talking about all of the 65 million vacant apartments that they've built. I mean, it truly is a credit monster. And here you say you're showing that the Chinese passenger car sales dropped 20% almost in January to 2.02 million after a 16% drop in December. So the China, and you know, when China admits these kind of drops, you can like double them. But gold, back yuan, China to crush the dollar, Belt and Road. They love to produce all these stories that somehow it's game over for the dollar and China's on the ascendancy. Sun Tzu. What about this one? Here it is. This is the one that David Stockman was referring to. China's housing glut passed pale over the economy. A building binge leaves cities with 65 million empty apartments. I'm sure there's dozens of bridges. There's Belt and Roads. There's all kinds of stuff that's just built to create work in China. They borrow money. They never get paid back on it. No rent is going to be paid on those apartments. The state-owned banks that lent money to build those are never going to get their money back. No worries. They'll just extend the loans. They'll convert them into equity, do what they have to do, or lend them more money so they can build more houses and kick the can down the road further. Anyone who thinks that the Chinese economy is going to crush the dollar is not really paying attention. Well, they're paying attention to gold pumper channels who all repeat the same stuff. Although I do have to admit, in the last 6 months, we are seeing many of the channels starting to really think about what they've been saying for the last 7 years and starting to recognize the reality. I mean, David Stockman today, in referencing this, said this is a red-style Ponzi scheme, and he's absolutely right. Game over, game changer, gold, back yuan, Sun Tzu. Yeah, it's a cliche, and again, that's what you get when you listen to a lot of the alternative financial media. All right, let's move on to, I think it's time, no, the 25th Amendment. Then we're going to go on to Moronica. Now, there's big news over the weekend. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I saw clips of the Andy McCabe, I think that's what his name is. Yeah, Andrew McCabe, Andy McCabe, former acting FBI director. This guy is... It doesn't have both oars in the water. Or unless he's just being clever as a fox and realizing he's in a world of trouble and he's got to say some outrageous things and admit some criminal activity so he can sell his books to help pay for his pending trial. But to go on TV and to say, yeah, well, we wanted to remove the president. Like, that's his job as the FBI director. And the reason he gives is because the president was criticizing the investigation. Yeah, because why did you start the investigation in the first place? You never said, well, we thought he might have been colluding with Russia. Why did you think that? Because Comey got fired. Oh, so you're trying to protect your own. I mean, he really, as Trump says here, there's a lot of explaining to do to the million people who just elected a president. What's interesting, you read the comments on Twitter, they almost seem to think the ends justify the means, but that's not how, they don't seem to have the mental capacity to realize what they're actually saying. Yeah, I understand you don't like Trump, but does that mean that you use the FBI to try to get rid of the guy on just, quote, trumped up charges? I would imagine if the new Attorney General has any type of just normalcy. I mean, if I just take the politics out of it, it's outrageous to have the FBI and the DOJ meeting to try to figure out ways to start a Russian investigation, falsify documents to the FISA court, and then to try to figure out how they can count heads amongst the cabinet to help them remove the president. Remember, it's up to the cabinet. If Trump is out of his mind, then sure, the cabinet would get together. They duly convene and say, okay, I think this is a serious thing here. The guys know what he's doing. Not because we disagree with him, because he just doesn't know what he's doing. He's out to lunch, and we have to remove him. That's fine. That's constitutional. But you see people conflating, well, if the FBI is doing that, somehow that's constitutional, and they get all snarky and say, oh, Trump and Dershowitz are saying that the 25th Amendment is unconstitutional. Don't they know that the 25th Amendment is part of the Constitution? Yeah, it's for the cabinet, not for Andrew McCabe and his buddies to try to figure out how to get the cabinet to use it. All right, what else happened on that? I think Trump is pissed off. I think he knows too much, because I saw a comment. Somebody said, well, okay, you know all this. Why is Rod Rosenstein still working there? And I don't know. He must have some type of plan. I think it's one of those keep your friends close, your enemies closer. It has to be. Not willing to speculate on that anymore. And then here, the news breaks. Former FBI lawyer James Baker also told the Congress that they had detailed alleged discussions among senior officials at the Justice Department and the FBI. They had these discussions to try to get rid of him. That's not their job. And clearly, not only is it not their job, you could say, well, they were being patriots. No, they were being partisans, because you've heard people like Comey say that the Democrats have to win and we have to get rid of this guy. It was more based on, it's just a visceral reaction to an outsider winning. They had all counted on Hillary Clinton winning, and they were going to keep their jobs, and this guy threw a monkey wrench into the whole thing. All right, now I think it's time for Veronica, and then we're going to get into whether we have exited the crypto winter. Uh-oh, we got a moron here.
Presenting the distinguished international news commentator and foreign correspondent,
Smaulgld. This has been an extraordinary week in world affairs.
No, I told Hillary Clinton that that's moronic.
Now, the media, objectively, really has given themselves a black eye in the past few years. And part of that is because they really are in a position where they will do anything, say anything, in order to try to bring down Trump. Now, there's people who don't refuse to see it because they don't like Trump, and they figure, well, whatever they're saying must be true because they want to believe it, rather than thinking that it's the result of true journalism, just like they assume that the FBI, well, they're the ones who know what they're doing, or the intelligence community, they're the ones who understand intelligence. Well, it's pretty obvious to me, and I don't really have a horse in the race here, that no, they're actually very political. All of the branches of government have become hyper-political and somewhat weaponized, in that you really can't trust what they say. That there's not just, I mean, you only have to go back to, they have weapons of mass destruction. There's a reason why people don't trust the media or the government on many things, is because they don't necessarily apply, quote, best practices to their analysis. They apply best, in some instances, propaganda. And that's where we are now. What they've done is, whenever they can, if there's ever a story that they can congeal around and say, oh, this is where we are as a country, and whatever bad thing is happening, it's a result of Donald Trump. Whether it's the Covington kids wearing the MAGA hats, well, clearly those kids are a result of Donald Trump's racist rhetoric. And of course, you know, these young 15-year-old kids, they have no respect at all. They put the hat on, and they might as well just put a Klan hat on and surround whoever and taunt them. And that was how they portrayed them in that scene with the Indian elder and the black Israelites. When it turns out they were just waiting for the bus, and they were being taunted by the black Israelites, and that the Indian elder just walked into the crowd and started pounding on his drum, and he was supposedly trying to diffuse the situation between the two. But then it turned out he changed his story and made it sound like he was frightened and they were mocking him. And of course the mainstream media went along with this story because it fit what they wanted to show, is that these racist white kids in MAGA hats are bad news. And it turned out almost the exact opposite of what happened. Well, then you had this other example of this other case that came out. Some guy, he's in some show, Jesse Smollett. Apparently he had an issue. It was out at 2 o'clock in the morning in Chicago, and he claims he got surrounded by two guys, and they threatened him and said, hey, this is MAGA country. poured bleach on him, as one does at 2 in the morning when it's 40 below. He just happened to be carrying a noose around, put it around his neck, and then he broke away from them, went online and said he is the gay Tupac, and then went to the cops and said this is horrible, and he's tough, but he's forever scarred. Okay, now if that's what happened, that's pretty outrageous, and of course everyone would be outraged, whether you are a MAGA wearing hat. It's just an outrageous story that someone would do that to someone, and of course. Turns out, well, maybe it didn't happen. But when it was reported that it happened, you had no shortage of celebrities or presidential candidates or news media saying it happened, and then immediately, this is the worst thing, and of course it has something to do with Trump, and these types of crimes are on the uprise, and we have to stop this, and we have to stop Trump, and people wearing those hats, they might as well be wearing Klan hats, and so on. And we heard from Kamala Harris, and we heard from Cory Booker. They, in no uncertain terms, denounced this as a modern-day lynching. This is what Trump brings upon the world, and so on. And as it turns out, that now it looks like the police have, through some detective work, have started to realize that it looks like he paid 2 Nigerians to fake the attack, and they're now cooperating, and it looks like he did this for attention. So you would think that Cory Booker, there were a lot of people like Ocasio-Cortez who just accepted the story the minute they heard his face value. It had to be true, and not only had to be true, it was because he said this is MAGA country. You can see what Trump is doing to this country. He's creating this divisiveness, and never stopping to think that, of course not. I mean, it sounds plausible to them because that's what they think. They think that anybody who wears a MAGA hat is out to commit all types of atrocities. Well, now that the story is out that it's probably not true, and that they're looking to talk to these 2 Nigerian fellows who were paid a certain amount of money, it sounds like, to conduct this mock attack. Well, we have Cory Booker. When he's asked about it, here's his response to this, now that there's a different light on this.
Well, the information's still coming out.
The information is still coming out. So now he wants to withhold judgment. Now that it looks like the story that he originally had no problem being judgmental about, well, now he says, the information is still coming out.
Well, the information's still coming out. I'm going to withhold until all the information actually comes out from on-the-record sources. We know in America...
See, then what they do is, then they say, but directionally, you see, it could have happened, and therefore, if it could have happened, it did happen, and I had every right to jump the gun. That's basically what they do in these things. It's the Dan Rather when in 2000, I think it was, or 2004, one of those years, that was 2004, he's running against John Kerry, and they decided they were going to make a story that George Bush W was a draft dodger. So someone had produced a letter to the draft board that was signed to try to get George W out of the draft, and it was signed. It was 1969, and he should have been drafted, but for this letter to the draft board written by some influential person, clutched W from the draft, and essentially he is a draft dodger. Now we can prove it. Dan Rather goes on TV. He's got the evidence. And it turns out that the letter was a forgery, and it was an obvious forgery because some people on the internet figured out from looking at the letter that typewriters back in 1969 did not have a certain keystroke that had been made with this letter. So Dan Rather has to eat crow and realize that the story is fake, but to this day he insists that the story is directionally correct, meaning that, he was a draft dodger. Now, we don't have the proof, but we believe that. And if we believe that, it doesn't matter that the letter wasn't correct. I mean, it's the whole I stand by my reporting type mentality. Well, here is Kamala Harris. Now, she goes to New Hampshire today, where she's running for president. Now, you should see the look on her face. You're not going to see it, but they ask her, okay, she had also condemned this. This is the real problem. She did the modern-day lynching thing, too. This is outrageous. This reflects on Trump, the whole thing. So journalists ask her, what do you think now? And listen to how she answers the question.
Which tweet? What tweet?
Which tweet? Like, what are you talking about? The one that she was so emotionally enraged about like 4 days ago. Now she's like, which one are we talking about?
Which tweet? What tweet?
Saying that it is a modern day lynching that.
Okay, what she's doing now, then she looks away from the reporter, like behind to her, like advised, like, okay, did I write this, or did one of you guys write this, or how do we answer this? And then she makes like then she just does the whole Ralph Crandom humana. Watch what she says here.
Sorry.
Yes, Jesse Smollgld.
Okay, so I will say this about that case.
Let me say this about that.
Okay, so I will say this about that case.
Reminds me of John Kennedy. It wasn't even John Kennedy. It was on a comedy record. When John Kennedy didn't know what to say, he'd always say, well, let me say this about that. And then he'd just start mumbling. But here she is. She's going to... What tweet? What tweet are we talking about? Hold on.
Modern day lynching that.
Sorry.
Yes, Jesse Smollgld.
Okay, so I will say this about that case. I think that the facts are still unfolding, and...
Oh, yeah, now the facts are unfolding. When it first came out, it was a modern-day lynching, something had to be done, and now we have to wait and see what this is about here.
I'm very concerned about, obviously...
Yeah, she's very concerned about obviously what. Anyway. Well, that's it for tonight's Moronica. It's unbelievable that this actually passes. Where a lot of people think, oh, yeah, she's being prudent here. She wants to find out what actually happened before she has any judgment on this. All right. Now, let's get into crypto. That's the topic of the story. Today was a big day for the cryptocurrencies. And it looks like February is going to be a month where they actually rise for the first time in almost a year. And again, this could all change, but let's take a look now what's going on with the cryptocurrencies. So, today, let's look at the prices first. Always got to look at the prices. Bitcoin right now, $3,928. That is up 7.31%. Ethereum up 11% to nearly $150. Litecoin at $48.55, up over 10%. Bcash up to $148, up 15%. So a very big day, all day today with the crypto. So I asked the question, is this the end of the crypto winter? I say, looks like the crypto winter may be over. Now, why do I say this? Well, the fact that they haven't gone away and they didn't collapse to zero and they've been hanging in and people have been doing what I expected them to do based on the past 2 or 3 bear markets, continued investment in the space, continued regulatory pronouncements, continued ATMs, investments, just adoption, hash rate going up, transactions going up, transaction value going up. It's not going away. And the price, the price goes down, and I made this mistake, as I mentioned, back in 2013. Well, that's it. The price is down. That proves that I'm right. The cryptocurrencies are worthless, and everyone's going to forget about them. No, this time I knew better that wasn't what was going to happen. There's more interest today than there ever was in cryptocurrencies, other than from your speculative investor who was just buying cryptos because they were going up, and then when they went down, they sold them. But a lot of money has since poured in, plenty of money in 2018, even though the price dropped. You saw the formation of Backed, which is a Microsoft entity with the New York Stock Exchange and Starbucks. You saw Fidelity saying they're getting money, they're going to move in. Goldman Sachs putting money into Poloniex and Square and other companies, Circle, not Square, and TD Ameritrade saying they're going to launch in 2019. All these companies putting money in stable coins, raising $400 million. Plenty of investment in the space. And even though the price went down, that was still happening. Now it looks like, could be an early call here, but things are really starting to pick up in the last couple of days. It started with Litecoin a couple of weeks ago, bursting out. But let's just look at this Bitcoin ATM thing. And again, it's not a big portion of sales that happen through these ATMs, but Bitcoin ATM installations are now at nearly 4,400. There's over 2,800 that support Litecoin, over 2,600 of these machines in the United States. And that's up from like 1,200 last year at this time. And now even in Iran, they have one. Iran, you know, doesn't hurt for them to have them in Iran, but there you go. There's the first one in Iran, just launched the other day. And that's just, to me, that's the way I look at Bitcoin ATMs is the same reason I look at US Mint sales. They're not the driver of the sales of gold or silver or Bitcoin, but they reflect the retail sentiment, the idea that people are interested in it. And, you know, when you see the retail sentiment go up, there's usually some institutional sentiment. Now, let's look at crypto institutions. And as I mentioned, backed Fidelity, they're coming. ATD, Ameritrade, there are at least a dozen or so Bitcoin ETFs lined up. They may not get approved this year, the Bitcoin ETFs, but the New York Stock Exchange has an ETF pending. VanEck has a Bitcoin ETF pending. Putting that aside, you have the back trading platform coming. You already have a CBOE, a CME, Bitcoin trading futures. Fidelity is going to launch its institutional trading platform for cryptocurrencies. TD Ameritrade's got ErisX. They're going to launch that as well. And they're not going to launch them because there's no demand, and they're not like, if we build it, they will come. Now, an interesting thing that happened today was this company, Cambridge Associates, and they advise pension funds and the like, endowments, on what they should invest in, and they're saying it's time to consider cryptocurrencies. For people who are thinking that this thing is going away, you already have, we saw the other day, I think it's Morgan Creek, got a deal, $40 million from Fairfax, Virginia police officer pensions to invest in crypto assets, including eventually coins like Bitcoin and Litecoin. In the meantime, they've invested, I think, in Coinbase and backed in other investments. So now here you have Cambridge Associates, who is a consultant to pension funds and endowments, a very big one, international, advising that they should get into, institutional investors should get some crypto exposure. Now, here's the rationale for that. If you only invest 1% of anything in your portfolio, the most you can lose is 1%. But we've seen that cryptocurrencies over the past 10 years, at any given point that you might have invested, you might have made 10, 20, 30 times your money. Well, if 1% of your portfolio does that, you can actually hedge and balance out any losses you may have on the rest of your portfolio. If you happen to lose the entire 1% investment, which is hard to do if you invest not just in Bitcoin, but you invest in maybe 20 or 30 different crypto assets, but even if it does go to zero, well, you've lost 1% and the rest of your portfolio can balance it out. And I think that's the rationale for institutions to get into crypto. But remember, if a lot of institutions only put a very small amount into it, there's not that much to invest in. I mean, the market cap of Bitcoin is 61 billion, 68 billion. Litecoin is only worth under $3 billion. So there's room for small amounts to move markets, even more so than in gold and silver. Now, Grayscale Investment, now this is a company that has made available certain crypto products for institutions. You can buy Bitcoin Trust, you can buy Litecoin Trust. So they have a bunch of different trusts. But they said in the fourth quarter, when the prices were really down, that 66% of their investment was obviously from institutions. And here's a little chart they have here. I'll show it to you. The bulk of it is in Bitcoin. Assets under management, they almost have $1 billion in the Bitcoin Trust. Bitcoin Cash has 1.8 million. Ethereum Trust is 5.8 million. Ethereum Classic even has 19 million. That's interesting. Litecoin Trust is about 300,000. So as this is just one company, Grayscale, but they're pulling in money and they have a decent amount of institutional investment. That's just one small company. Now, the CFTC, this is very interesting. For those people who think that they're going to crack down on cryptos, the CFT commissioner is saying they need to create crypto self-regulatory organization, which means the CFTC is like, yeah, you guys go figure it out. We'll take a look at it, but we trust you'll do the right thing. That's what a self-regulatory organization is. Because if they viewed it as some type of serious threat for fraud, they'd be all over it. Before you can make a move, you'd have to go ask them, can I do it, boss, can I do it? The fact that the CFTC commissioner is suggesting that they create a self-regulatory structure, again, it's not going anywhere. They know that there's big money that wants in on this, and they want to help it go along. What else do we have here? I think that's it on the institutions. All right, crypto payments. This is interesting. The Lightning Network is growing by leaps and bounds now. Last night we showed the statistics. But here, you can now send Bitcoin tips over Lightning. On Twitter, we saw you can now buy pizza through there are all these new user interfaces that are coming up to take advantage of the growing Lightning Network, whereby you don't have to wait for your transaction to be recorded on the blockchain. It happens at a second layer off the blockchain, and that makes it lightning fast. And now they're saying there's this new if you like a favorite tweet, you can also send a small Bitcoin tip via the Lightning Network. I asked somebody to test it out, but I didn't get anything. Well, I gotta go check to see if I did. All right. Now this one is big. This is payments. You may not know what this company is. Rakuten, or whatever it's called. They are Japanese e-commerce. They're like eBay. They're like Amazon. They're huge. And it looks like their new payment app supports cryptocurrencies. Now, Japan is a very crypto-friendly country. There's more places that they accept Bitcoin, Litecoin there than there are in the United States. But again, this is another... I think people are so used to the idea of game changers and things happening all at once. Most of the world's changes are incremental. Big changes are incremental. And it's just like before you know it, everyone has internet access and they act like, yeah, I always had email and I always had internet. And that's essentially what's happening. It's the same with phone booths. Yeah, just go to phone booth. It used to be you had to have a phone installed in your house. All of a sudden there were phone booths out on the world. Now there's no phone booths out there anymore. But you're starting to see cryptocurrency ATMs. And you say, well, there's not that many now. And it's the same with Netflix. A lot of these things, they just incrementally just move into the situation, into the world, and you don't realize it until it's just commonplace. And that's what's happening with this cryptocurrency stuff. All right, what else? Now, prices today. Very big moves. We already talked about that. Ethereum was up big here, but there was a lot in the media here. CCN covered this. Crypto surged 13% overnight. What else happened? Which one is this? This is me pointing out coin market cap. At one point, there's a currency called EOS. It was up 24%. And as a matter of that point of that raise, as a result of that increase, it actually passed Litecoin and took over fourth place, knocking Litecoin down, which only rose 12% during the day. And so now that's in fifth place. And what's this here? All right, well, that's about it for tonight. Let's take a look at some of your comments here. Let me put up the... if you guys are interested in getting your Smaulgld mugs, your game-changing mugs, you want to do some mug stacking, go to smaulgld.com. I know many of you watch on your iPhone. You're not even watching, you just have the sound on, so you can't see all this stuff. But it's a pitch to donate via Bitcoin, Litecoin, PayPal, donate via Patreon, or sending your donation by check to Smaulgld LLC, P.O. Box 714, Dover, New Hampshire, 03820. All right, let's see what your comments are indeed over here. All right. Well, we got the crowd here. Michael Falwell is here. Lance, Ann, Pablo. Lance says, I'm surprised cryptos are spiking today. Well, it just happens when it happens. Ann says sold EOS too early, but it's okay. Selling Litecoin in the 50s, she says. Stacking assets as Lambo. You know, there's a song. One of the, you guys may not know this, but one of the songs by Mark Bataille that are the intro to the Smaulgld live streams is called When Lambo. And I'll play it for you. This is When Lambo by Mark Bataille. Right. Well, during that, I noticed that Joe said that he was going to send me some crypto. He bought some crypto, and he says he has to wait a certain amount of time before he can send it out. Actually, I think that's because they don't have the Bitcoin there. But then he says he did get a Coinbase referral. And I have that link too. Here's that link right here, if anyone's interested. That if you purchase through that link $100 worth of cryptocurrency, they load up your account by $10. You get $10 worth of free crypto, and then they send me $10 worth of free crypto. Looks like Ann has the same offer as well. Yeah, and Joe looks like he did that as well. He used someone else's. I guess I should have promoted that more. I've had that link on the under the Smaulgld BitChute and YouTube for quite some time. But in any event, let's see what else happened here. So he bought $200, so the minimum fee and the percentage fee base were the same. And Joe is buying Bitcoin for the purposes of using it for donations and tipping, which is nice. And you can do the same with Litecoin. And the added bonus of that is you're not investing money when you buy $50, $100, $200. You're getting close, but you're doing it just as if you're taking money out of the bank to spend. It's like walking around money, but it's easier to spend once they release it to your wallet because you can easily donate it. And it gets there. And not only when you spend it with less of a fee. And I'm going to do this. Joe says it's for donations, not necessarily all the Smaulgld. I'm going to have to make him dance for it. Okay. I'll have to be on 3 times a day instead of 1 time a day. And I'll have to answer all of Joe's phone calls and answer all of his emails and get on live chats with him half a day. You got it, Joe. Okay. And Joe just realized he's not a no-coiner anymore. And you see, he's bought... This is not... I don't view that as an investment. I view that as, you know, he's bought some Bitcoin to spend. He's bought some Litecoin to spend. That's actually what it's for. It's not speculation. And Joe says he doesn't mind diversifying into cryptos now that he has the important things. Gold, silver, and a Smaulgld mug. Not necessarily in that order. Obviously, I think you should always have your Smaulgld mug stack set aside, but okay. Michael Falwell says, so straight to new all-time high moon from here or pull back maybe, oh, who knows? You guys, yeah, let's see what you guys think. I have no idea what's going to happen here. My general theory, though, is that Wall Street stood on the sideline for 10 years and watched a few of these mega rallies, not just in ICOs, and they did realize they got none of it. They got absolutely none of it. And now they're thinking, look, the reason we got none of it was first we were suspicious of it. Then we viewed it as a threat. Then we realized, no, we can make this work for us. We can move it into the whole system ourselves. And then they realized, yeah, but there's not the proper regulatory structure. So that's what they've been doing. I think they're just pushing. They're trying to get this all into a regulatory structure so they can create their next bubble. Because what's the next bubble? They're calling this the everything bubble. First you had the real estate, you had the internet bubble, then you had the real estate bubble, now you have the everything bubble. Well, where's it going to go next? I say it has to be an institutional crypto bubble. Again, not investment advice. That's just my macro view on what I think is happening here. All right, looks like we're a little slow here on the comments for me here. I can't seem to get them down there. All right, Johnny Morris here. Prashanthi girl is here. All right. Yep, I think that's about it. I just want to thank everyone for joining me tonight and thank John for joining us late. Yeah, unless anyone has any more questions or comments, I'm going to call it a night, and I hope you guys have a great night. I do want to thank you for the donations, for the support, and for all the insightful comments, and also for the, we really do have a lack of trolls, which is good. We don't have a problem with trolls. We really don't have a problem at all. I think it's because we have a nice, tight audience, and I really do appreciate that. So, we will see you again tomorrow night, as we see you each and every evening around this time. Sometimes a little later, sometimes a little earlier, but generally between 7 and 8 o'clock. So, guten Abend. No trolls. But you know, I'd run them off. I think maybe that's the reason. I haven't blocked anyone. Not intending to. Muchas gracias, Pablo. Hasta luego. Hasta mañana. Buenas noches. Stop the stream. Stop the stream. Oh, Crypto Shrugged Off had his first major interview on Adam Meister show. You got to come on. Anyone has to come on this show, including Crypto Shrugged Offer. All right, guys. Anyone who wants to come on, you're welcome to come on. We'll do a show. Oh, by the way, I do want to get Salivate Metal. We're going to do Saturday Night Silver with Smaulgld and Sal one of these evenings, maybe next weekend, maybe this weekend. I'm not sure. But it'll be a multitude of gratitude all around. And at one point, I'm going to try to imitate him to the point where we're both talking and you don't know which one is which. So, we'll see what happens.